Real Talk is proudly sponsored by Y-Wave P20 Pro and MTN.
Each week for 10 weeks, we're giving away the latest Y-Wave.
Hello and welcome to a Feel Good Friday on Real Talk here on SABC 3. I'm your host, Azania Mosaka. My guest tonight is arguably one of the most important voices on talk radio right now. He's here not only as a radio and TV broadcaster, but also as a thought leader, a lecturer, prolific writer, political animal, and philosophy rock star. I'm going to be spending this hour getting to know him a little bit better. So please welcome onto the Real Talk couch, one of my faves, the one and only, Eusebius Makaiza.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you, Azania.
It's great to have you here.
Finally, I've been waiting for an invite.
Oh my, little did we know.
It's wonderful to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful,
so you're
beautiful
fresh
studios, by
out
the
of
way.
a yoga class.
I was doing yoga this afternoon. It is the hardest thing ever.
Yes.
I've got new respect for people who do it.
I love yoga, live
Yeah.
by yoga.
It's
So why did
taken-
you switch from the weight training that you've been doing to yoga?
I still do the weights training. I just haven't done it in a couple of months because I was ill. And I decided that, you know what, I actually need to challenge my body with something else. I'm struggling to lose weight. My body fat is way too high. I need to up the cardio, and I also need to be much more supple and flexible. So I started doing, and I know these two things are very weird because they don't go together.
Yeah.
I've started both boxing. I actually injured my wrist a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I started yoga as well. And I tell you, like, boxing is the best cardio ever.
Yes.
So hopefully the macabre can finally go, because I'm so sick of people saying to me, stop telling us you go to gym every day and you don't have a six-pack yet, right? And telling them that I can bench press 130 kilogram doesn't help.
matter.
They want to see a body shape.
Of course.
That's all about cardio. So between the yoga and the boxing, it's just to try a new routine to shock the body.
And the benefits of yoga are amazing. The
It's amazing.
flexibilities. People
Although
will
it's taken me 2 weeks,
Yeah.
you know that I'm not the most esoteric person, to be able to actually not feel weird
Yeah.
when I say to my yoga at the end, namaste, because I'm like, if my friends had to see me do this.
No, and the ones that love you the most will thank you for that flexibility.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I want to start off by exploring your life, Eusebius, because your mind, of course, is made up of a number of things, series of things. Your background has formed and shaped who you are today. So you grew up in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape.
I did. We all have a past. I grew up in Makhanda, what is now known as
I
Makhanda.
know.
And grew
name
up
change
there
is fantastic.
in the 80s. I'm soon going to join the rest of you in your 40s. So, you know, I was born in 1979, grew up there in the 80s in a very working class, poor colored community.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of my early life. And like many of us, that weird in-between generation where, you know, you can't quite say that you were fighting apartheid.
Yes.
Not quite a born
But
free.
you know it.
But you're kind of like in between, the guinea pigs for multiculturalism. And it's a childhood that I really enjoyed. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
you
lot to
talk
be said
about
that's
it.
not in Trana about it, but actually I really enjoyed my childhood.
Yeah, because you talk about it with such fondness. Like one day they'll make you an ambassador. They'll give you the keys to the city because, you know, you always make sure to talk about it, and so well as well. You make us want to go there.
Look, all of us have, you know, I mean, you can't be a South African without having lived under conditions that are very, very hard.
Yeah.
Just being a woman
Yeah.
makes this a difficult place to live in, right?
Yeah.
If you come from a working class community, it's a difficult place. You know this kind of stuff that I've spoken about, written about, being bullied as a child, being called moffy in primary school, being raped as a child. So there's a lot there if one wanted to induce tears on SABC 3.
Yes.
But at the same time as well, I was lucky. I had lots of opportunity to do amazing things. And sometimes it just takes the right teacher, the right headmistress, and suddenly when talent
Yeah.
or latent talent meets opportunity, your life can take a completely different trajectory.
And I know you're eternally grateful. You know, as you often say as well, that your life could have turned out like some of your other relatives, you know, and being that person who's accomplished amongst relatives who say are still in the same condition is not always easy to navigate, because there's an element of guilt that's involved, but also that gratitude to know that you have a different
True, Azza,
opportunity.
That's so true. I think it's easy to feel survivor's guilt. It's also easy to try and fish for compliments. So I'm not trying to project false humility when I say there's an important role that luck plays in our lives.
Yeah.
Anyone who listens to my radio show will know that I bang on about that on a daily basis, but it's true. And one of the things that keep me humble is I remember at least once a week what my standard 1 teacher, that gives away my age, not grade 3, my standard 1 teacher said to me was, you are quite clever, Eusebius, but you're not as clever as your sister Geneva. She was a year or 2 ahead of me. And my sister dropped out of school. She had a teenage pregnancy. My younger sister as well. I was actually the first person in my immediate family to even matriculate. And I often think to myself, okay, I deserve a lot of the things that I have on my CV, but at the same time as well, what is the difference between 2 10-year-olds coming out of a divorce home where the one ends up completing school, getting a couple of degrees, and the other one doesn't? Surely a 10-year-old can't be credited for choosing to go to the library. We just express the way we deal with a brutal home differently. One person will act out and maybe stop going to school as a 10-year-old. The other one might find escapism by going to read Enid Blyton books. And so I can't be asking for credit for the choices that I made as a 10-year-old. I am lucky in that sense that I find healthier ways of dealing with some of the discontent in the family and the community.
Yeah. You have a very special relationship with your dad.
Yes.
And so often we frame the mother as the one who's the nurturer, who'll pull and keep the family together. But your experience is different from that.
You know, and I'm sure my dad, I know that he's watching. We have a beautiful relationship, even though when he divorced my mom, or they got divorced to each other, I was only 9 or 10 years old. For the next 10 or so years, our relationship was very patchy. But my early memories of my dad are very special. I don't know how this worked with your family, but my mom was the one who would hit you. You know, all those stories we have of being hit with a brush, being thrown with stuff.
Yes.
She was very violent. I mean, I love her to bits, and, you know, God bless her wherever she might be now.
Cloth.
Because she passed on while I was a postgraduate student overseas. But my dad, I don't have one single memory of my dad hitting us. My memories of him are of him teaching me how to tell the time as a child, lying on bed and going through the dictionary to learn all these English words and what they mean. He was the one who would pay for me to have an opportunity to go to a former Model C school. And so all my memories of my dad are really, really beautiful. And I love my mom because I understand what made her the violent mom that she was. But the truth of the matter is that my dad and I have a very special relationship. It was probably at its worst later in life for all sorts of reasons we may or may not get to, including my sexuality that he struggled with, and me being very unhappy with him in relation to my siblings that he, in my opinion, didn't quite love as unconditionally as he loved me. But now we have one of the most beautiful relationships. He'll even tell me what he thinks about some of my boyfriends.
Right. You know, that must be such a difficult thing to now have to contend with when you recognize that you were treated differently.
Absolutely. But, you know, everything in life is so double-sided. And I'm beginning to appreciate the double-sidedness of all experiences in life. And so the beautiful thing that has come out of the way in which, look, my dad has a beautiful relationship with my older sister, for example. I mean, they gossip and speak more often than I do with either of them. But the beautiful thing that has come out of the conflict that I used to have with my dad about ways in which I think that he was treating his grandchildren poorly is that we are now incredibly, incredibly intimate. We have a very beautiful relationship right now. So out of the adversity came the opportunity to have a stronger relationship. The same with when I came out to him as a gay child. You know, he struggled with that as well.
How old were you?
I was in second year of university. I would have been 18 turning 19. And, you know, back in the day before social media, these days people come out on WhatsApp and stuff. I wrote him a handwritten letter that I posted in Grahamstown. And I remember when he called me and he was just bawling his eyes out. And then we never talked about it until later when I was at Oxford, and he called me again and then had the audacity, sorry, Dad, you really had the audacity to ask me whether I don't really just want to try with a woman just once. You know, and I said to him, Dad, wouldn't you just like to try with a man just once? And that was the end of that. And I mean, now it's water under the bridge. Honestly, my dad can give workshops to other parents about how to think about having a child who is gay. So he's come an incredibly long way. And the most beautiful thing about it, Azza, is that the journey had nothing to do with me. I was a very obstinate child. So I had an attitude of, Your homophobia, you deal with it.
Yes.
You got a problem with me
You're
being in
about
an
to walk me
interracial
through it.
relationship, you work with it. And he walked through that journey all by himself, and I'm really, really proud of him.
No, and the older we get, the more empathetic we become
I am
to
now,
our
yeah.
parents.
I am
you know,
now, yeah.
because they're also having their own journeys with all the things that we throw their way as their children.
Yes.
So when did you first, because you talk about being teased, being bullied, being called all sorts of names, you've written about it as well, to say that it would make you cry when people called you names, things like Morphy. Did you stand up for yourself then? Because now you certainly stand up for yourself in debates and arguments.
Oh, hell no. I mean, look, I was such a, as we say in Afrikaans, a pieperige kind. I was such a softie.
Yeah.
So Mizi looks butch compared to what I was like in primary school. So my response to being teased was just to start crying immediately. And if I wasn't being called by the colored kids in my class, Moffy, there was one boy in particular, I remember him to this day, this Xhosa boy. I hope he's watching because he can see that I'm now famous. I'm not sure what happened to him. And he used to say to me, and I didn't even know what he meant, but I knew how it made me feel.
Yeah.
Usisi booty. And obviously I knew exactly what he was referring to.
Yeah.
But I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't have a voice. I mean, I was thin, I was emaciated, I was scrawny, and I found my escapism, as so many gay people often do, by excelling.
Yeah.
So you can call me stubborn, but did you also get 10 out of 10 for the test? You can call me Moffy, but you have
We're debating
do you have
in your
grade
life.
8 for classical music.
Yeah.
So, and it's a pattern with many middle-class gay people. Obviously, I don't want to stereotype, you know, there are clever straight people and talented straight people, and there are some not so talented gay people, but very often gay people do better than their genetic profile would have you predict they would do.
Yes,
Because
as a
before
response to that.
100%.
Yeah.
And that was my response. So I didn't stand up for myself. The first time I stood up for myself, or from the point of view of defending myself verbally, was only once I started doing debating and public speaking, because then I literally found my voice.
Yes.
But as a primary school kid, I didn't have a voice.
Yes.
And my only outlet really was either to read books or to go and play the piano.
But before that, before you were playing the books and the piano, because I agree with you that debate and being able to express yourself, to test your ideas, gives a lot of confidence. But then that's the one side of it, the reading and the classical music. But surely, I've got the list of games that were played there. Scaloli, Courant Papier, Marbles, Clip Clippy. Do all of these sound familiar?
They
Like-
do, except marbles, because marbles is what the boys were mostly playing, and I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
playing with my sisters. So I would be playing with all the girls. I would be playing Toto, which is a skipping road game, Skoluli, which a lot of people used to play, Haze, which is playing house.
Yes.
I would do all of those kinds of things. But all of my friends, when I was a child, were mostly girls, and so all the girls' games I could play. I mean, I used to knit even, Azza. I don't know if I still can. I would plait hair when my mom's friends come and visit. I would jump on the couch. So that's the kind of thing that I used to do. And that's why I'm saying, you know, and Jacob Dlamini, as you know, writes about this so beautifully
Yes,
in his first
yes.
book, Native Nostalgia. We aren't romantic about apartheid in the 80s, but it's remarkable how the human spirit still finds ways of being normal, being everyday, even in the face of adversity. So there was a lot about my childhood that was incredibly ordinary as a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's still so much to talk to you about. Like, it's a brain that you want to just dissect layer by layer by layer. Eusebius Makaiza is here with us, and he's known as a critical thinker who asks all the necessary questions without fear or favor. But tonight, it's also your chance to ask him anything that's on your mind about him. You can call the number on your screen, or you can tweet at Real Talk on 3. After the break, I'll chat to Eusebius about some of the subjects that he tackles through his writing and a whole lot more. We'll see you in a bit. Welcome back to Real Talk here on SABC 3, and tonight I'm having an exclusive sit-down with the incomparable Eusebius Makaiza. Tonight I'm having the sit-down with him, and we are going to break down a few aspects of his work, particularly his writing and his thoughts. Once ranked one of the top 20 debaters in the world as a representative of the Oxford Debate Union, he has a lot of accolades under his belt. He currently hosts one of the country's most popular and most engaging talk radio shows, and writes for a myriad of different local and international publications. Eusebius, you went to Rhodes, and then you got to study at Oxford as well. But your focus right through was law and philosophy.
Yes.
Why the two? And I know that they feed so well into the work that you do. And I guess at the time, this end, if this was the end in mind, might not have been clear.
Yes.
But here it is, feeding so well into the conversations that you have.
My choice of what to study, which is the same for many first-generation South African graduates, was random. I'll
Okay.
let you believe, right? Because remember I told you earlier, I was the first person in my immediate family to even finish matric. So I didn't have a conversation with any family member about what are you going to do next year. They were firstly just chuffed that I'm in matric.
Yeah.
And then I was doing well in matric, they were even more chuffed. And then obviously I said I want to go to university, they were just like overjoyed. So I applied for random stuff because I had no one to talk to. I applied to UCT to do a Bachelor of Commerce.
Wow.
Thank God I didn't go in the end. And the only reason I didn't go is because the inefficient buggers sent me my acceptance letter when I was already doing orientation week at Rhodes. But I can't imagine being the same person and being your colleague if I'd ended up being some boring accountant.
Yes.
I applied at Rhodes.
offense to accountants.
My first choice at Rhodes University was actually a Bachelor of Music. And only my second choice was really to study law. So you can see completely random, and that's a child that has opportunity but doesn't necessarily have an adult that can guide them and say, son, these are the things that you may want to think about. So I ended up taking law for a very, very arbitrary reason, because now I get to Rhodes and I've got to choose. Will it be a BMUS, or is it going to be the Bachelor of Arts specializing in legal theory? And then I had a nightmare because I thought, I know I'm a very competitive child and I've got grade 8 music, but I secretly knew that I wasn't good enough to be a concert pianist. And then I had nightmares. I thought, oh my God, in 20 years' time, you're going to be a music teacher in like Queenstown, with all due respect to music teachers. And because
But your dreams were bigger. Your dreams were
exactly. And so there went that. And then in matric, I had done street law, where law students from Rhodes University had come to my school, and they put me through a mock trial competition for high school kids. I went to the national ones, and I just fell in love with the idea of human rights. And so I ended up majoring in law. But I'm also quite lazy, to be honest. Law is a lot of work, right? It's an incredible amount of work. Philosophy, by contrast, the reading was less in terms of volume. It was just analytically more challenging. You have to think about all these really deep and difficult questions in ethics, in epistemology, and all these other clever branches of philosophy. And I excelled at that more than I did at law. I was a decent law student, but I was a better philosophy student. And then at the end of third year, I thought, I'm actually going to ditch the idea of doing an LLB and becoming a human rights lawyer. I want to study postgraduate philosophy, and that's what I did.
That's so weird, because there you are being this debating champion, and there's the law. You know, it would have fed so well if, you know, it came naturally to you. But as you said, philosophy is the way that you went. Now, you, in your book, you talk about how, as a society, we're not reflective enough. And you take it there. You want us to sit in the discomfort. There was a time when we weren't willing to as a society. But I find that increasingly, through people like yourself, through where the country has naturally gone, that we're forced to do that. So do you think that failure to want to reflect on our issues is just in part because of that discomfort and part of the shame that this country carries?
There are so many elements to why we are not comfortable with discomfort and comfortable with disagreement, and I'll just give you a couple of the most important ones. The first, Azza, is just that we don't know how to reason critically. No one teaches us how to argue, and no one tells you this is a good argument, this is a bad argument. These are what we call in logic fallacies, which means really bad ways of arguing. This is how you avoid them. This is how you spot them. If Azza commits one of these problems over dinner, you can call her out. There's a skill to critical reasoning. And if you do a subject like philosophy or logic, or even debating in high school or university, you become skilled at reasoning. And I think the first reason why, as South Africans, we don't really like having messy conversation about everything from racism to patriarchy is that we don't have the skill set. I know people, and by the way, getting a PhD, for example, doesn't mean that you are particularly good at difficult conversation. And I think the mistake we've made, if I was my Angie for one day, I really would make debating compulsory in every single South African school, and design a curriculum to help teach children from a young age how to reason critically. So the first reason is we don't have the toolkit, and so we shy away from tough conversation. And then the second is, which is partly why we're also such a terrible society when it comes to our misogyny, is that we are told that you have to dig in your heels and win an argument. If there's one bad thing about debating, I've got a lot of good things to say about it. One of the bad things about training kids to do competitive debating is that it makes you arrogant about your convictions and your beliefs. And I can't have a dialogue with you about patriarchy, about inequality, about racism, if I'm hell-bent on never changing my mind.
Were you ever like that?
Of course, and many people will say I'm still like that. It's very hard.
We've seen the change, which is something I also wanted to talk to you about, the progression and the change and the kind of relationship that you have with your listeners, because that is just a debate fest. Your show is just an argument fest. But we've got this call from Nomonde. Nomonde, you're calling us from Soweto this evening. Hello and welcome to Real Talk.
Hello, Azania.
Hi. Go ahead and chat to Eusebius.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say I love you guys both. And I think my mom is Eusebius' biggest fan. She listens on a daily, Monday to Friday. We just both love you. You're doing great work, and yes, I was asked to keep it brief, so yeah. I'm lost my words, but I just wanted to convey that.
Thank you so much for the call, Nomonde. So that kind of listener or viewer, they like you, but you know you're divisive, right? You have those that absolutely think, oh, it's that Eusebius again.
You know, Azza, the most important thing in a talk show host is to be authentic. And the only thing worse than dividing the SABC3 viewers is having viewers having no views about you, from the point of view of a station manager or the person who runs the SABC.
Yeah, the worst thing is the difference.
And I'm not saying one must be deliberately provocative, because listeners and viewers are also very sharp. They are going to sniff you out if they think that you're playing games with them. So you have to be authentic. I know nothing but being myself completely and honestly. But Nomonde's call is important, and thank you, Nomonde, for the love, and your mom, because we also think that trolls are representative of what the majority of people think. But you and I can sit together for an afternoon, and if we have to tell the public what we get in our emails, what we get in inboxes, what we get in DMs, people who stop you when you go and MC an event, I think the majority of people who are either lukewarm in their preferences for you or who love you to bits are not going to be saying to themselves, I love Azania, I better write a strongly worded letter to the Star to say how much I love her. We tend to react when someone says something that really challenges our most core beliefs. And so often when I started out, and in preparation for this, I was reflecting on how long I've been in media. It's now been almost 10 years, which is quite a long time. And I thought to myself, one of the things that have changed is that my friends have learned what it means for us to be public figures. When I started out, every single time, someone who'd be hating on me, a friend would be like, friend, I was defending you last night over dinner. And I've had to say to my friends, guys, I don't want to be so arrogant as to tell you the 10 counter examples to the person who don't like me is someone who will stop you at a club. I was just writing about this for my next book yesterday, actually. Someone who will stop you at a club and say, Eusebius, thank you so much. I've struggled with my sexuality. I can't get up in the morning. I hate myself for being gay. I've thought about committing suicide. This is a real example. And one of the things that get me up in the morning is hearing your voice at 9 o'clock. That person didn't tell that story on Twitter, but they will stop you in public and tell you. So I've learned over the years how to read public sentiment. And one of the most unrepresentative things are the extremes. The people who want to have your babies right now, or the ones who want to cliff you, they are statistical anomalies.
I want to hear about this book. We need to know about this book because he's got, what, 2 under his belt so far? Ooh. More with Eusebius after the break. Welcome back to Real Talk on SABC3. Well, if you've listened to my guest Eusebius on radio, you will know that he will never reduce the quality of his argument because of the possibility of public intimidation. Yet now more than ever before, South Africans are out they're out of their comfort zones, talking and engaging on issues that will shape the quality of the discourse. And it's thanks to people like him, voices like his. So Eusebius, we went around and we always try and package something special for our guests. So here's a little.
Scared.
No, you shouldn't be scared. People are always scared. I don't know why. You're fearless. Don't worry about it. So let's take a look at one special person, what they had to say about my guest.
Hi there, I'm Chester Missing, and I'm very excited to hear that one of my favorite people, Eusebius Makaiser, is going to be on Real Talk. I mean, that guy, he's intelligent, he's nice, he's fun, and he likes to think about things, which, you know, is unusual. I mean, really, if you try to debate Eusebius Makaiser, you'll end up looking like you just went through the Zondo Commission, the State Capture Commission. You will look like, you look like Mzwanele Mani debating himself. It really is amazing. He's a very intelligent. Read his book, Run, Races, Run. One of my favorite South Africans. Very intelligent and very kind. In fact, I'm going to be honest. If Eusebius ever decides to leave radio, hey, I'll leave that Conrad Koch guy in a second. What? You know, it's true. Eusebius would never betray me like that. No, Eusebius, ignore him. I'm totally ready. Anytime you want to get into comedy, I'll be there. You're doing an excellent job on radio. Facilitating some of the most important conversations in South Africa. It's an honor to have you as a friend, man. Halala, Eusebius Makaiser, halala. Zach, Conrad Koch, Zach.
So you've got some famous friends.
That is so gorgeous. You're going to reduce me to beautiful tears. I love Chester Missing, and I love Conrad behind him. What he doesn't say there, because he's actually a very self-effacing comedian. Yes. I love stand-up comics. I mean, I spent a whole chapter in my first book just doing an ode to South African comedians. I love what comedians can do.
You can't be a good... You know your crush on people like John Vlisman.
Yes, absolutely. Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
You can't be a good comedian if you're not incredibly intelligent. Chester Missing, or the guy behind him, has got a master's degree in social anthropology. He thinks long and hard. I love him to bits. He's not just funny. I actually at one stage used to fear for my friend's health, because I think that in order to be a good comedian, you've got to live. John Vlisman is exactly the same. So I've got all the love and respect for Chester Missing, and I mean Conrad as well.
Yeah.
I think I prefer Chester over Conrad slightly. As do many of his clients, by the way. You know, he often arrives for overnight gigs, and sometimes even when he rocks up at hotels, then you will find that he's been booked as Chester Missing rather than as Conrad.
Conrad. Yeah. He's become more famous than him. You've got a lot of famous friends, in fact. I imagine your dinner table, your dinner sessions with your friends are probably some of the most stimulating, because you find intelligence very sexy.
I do find intelligence very sexy. I never set out to be well known. I don't think of myself as a celeb or as famous, just as someone who likes debate. And I've managed to find careers in writing and in broadcasting that enable me to facilitate debate. So I'm always amused when real famous people say to me, "Oh my God, Eusebius, I can't believe that I'm meeting you." I'm like, really?
People. Who are the real famous people?
People like Azania, many of our colleagues in broadcasting. For me, being in Joburg and being in Sandton is just an opportunity to be part of the media that enable me to do the things that the childhood debater, the would-be lawyer, the would-be philosopher would like to do. Which is also why you will find me not thinking very long and hard about my wardrobe, what I do. I'm just me, because the aesthetics of media doesn't really interest me. All that I'm really interested in is what we can do with productive dialogue.
And here I put on one of my best
You look gorgeous.
dresses.
That's what,
and I knew it. I was like, maybe
week.
we should have told him to wear a jacket.
I was stressing the whole week about what I'm going to wear, because you know that I dress for radio all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So the art of a conversation. You're a great conversationalist. Tell me about your insights or your understanding of just the art of a conversation.
It's changed over the years. When I was in school and university, I thought the most important thing is to try and persuade people. And I used to use my tools as a law student, a philosophy student, and as a competitive debater to construct arguments. And you can become quite arrogant and quite drunk on your ability to very quickly construct an argument. I don't know whether you found the same and I heard you talking a little bit yesterday with your guest about the transition from music to talk radio. Talk radio has changed my attitude towards conversation. And I have learned a couple of things from talk radio that I didn't know as a university student doing competitive debating.
Yeah.
And two things that I've changed about the way I dialogue. Number one, telling stories. Nothing beats sincere and honest storytelling. I use that device in my writing. I use it on radio. Quick example on radio, when I interviewed Adam Katsavelis, the racist, his brother Nick, it was very difficult for Nick to admit that his brother is racist. And you know, as a technique, one of the easiest ways to make your guests vulnerable and put them in an honest space is to start off by telling stories about yourself. And I shared the story of racism in my own colored family, and that puts the guest at ease. So telling stories. And then the second thing, which I hope is the one thing that even haters will agree that I do, listen. I pride myself on the open line segment of my radio show of not interrupting people, and I've timed how much time the average listener gets when they call in. There isn't, and I've got lots of friends that I love and I respect in our medium, there isn't another radio talk shows in this country that gives listeners as much time to talk as I do.
And to ventilate their
People
ideas.
People want to be heard.
Yeah.
Obviously, the only trade-off is that in return for giving you 5 minutes, I'm not going to affirm your worldview if I think you're talking nonsense. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. You have the platform to speak, and people want to be heard, but in return, I also think I need to honor you calling into my show by telling you very, very genuinely what I think about the quality of your opinion.
Absolutely, and we've heard that pushback lots of times. But as you say, this might not have been the career that you had planned out, but over the years, with the upbringing that you've had, and I think of my cousin right now, because we used to go to colored schools in Aldos, and there was a teacher who always used to take them aside and put them through pronunciation sessions. Like, no, Mapule, it's not birthday, it's birthday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've all been through that.
We've all been through that. So have you had to adapt and change, you know, do certain things to fit into the presentation that's expected?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And we all do. I mean, some do it worse than others, right? No one wants to be quite as versatile as Aloysius Maimane. I think he's got way too many accents. But when I was in Standard 6, one of the first things that Mrs. Whitehead did, bless her, was to take me to the back of the library and to make sure that she gets rid of my very colored way of enunciating, the way we flatten our vowels and that kind of thing. And I don't know, I mean, there's social capital to learning the cultural grammar of English white South Africans. Who knows whether you and I would be on 702 if we were speaking like people do in Aldos. So it's a horrible thing because it's 2018. Now we all want to reclaim our blackness. And we're all talking about the violence of going through the multicultural schooling system. But it's double-edged. On the other hand, it is also not a coincidence that you and I are here on national television on a Friday. We have higher odds because of what it is that we learn to mimic as teenagers.
Yes, yes. And sometimes you wonder, you're like, how did I?
Yeah, now we suddenly want to be woke. Don't call me John, I'm Polani again, you know. But being John served you throughout high school, for example. So I'm profoundly aware that although there were costs that came with learning to mimic the cultural grammar of the English, that nevertheless, a lot of my blessings, a lot of the things on my CV were courtesy of accessing all of these kinds of things in high school.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things you tend to think, did we have to? Did we ever have to go through that? Well, Eusebius has forced the minds of many willing South Africans into a logical state through his activism and work in the media. And because of his appetite for conversation and engagement, he rarely tunes off or just kind of drifts off into something else. So where does he draw his support from? And what does he do for fun? We're going to get a little bit more personal with him after the break. Welcome back to Real Talk on SABC3, where the stage is yours. I'm still in conversation with best-selling author, radio and TV broadcaster, and political analyst Eusebius Makaiser. Overachievers and reformed Twitter-phobes like Eusebius really ever get a chance to not participate in public debate. And that can be quite exhausting. So what does he do during his downtime when he switches off from this tsunami of news and information? So do you ever switch off? Do you have the luxury to switch off? Can you help yourself?
I can't help myself. I'm trying to switch off and to learn to switch off now.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. You know what doing a long radio show does to you psychologically.
Yes.
And it's interesting how I'm switching off in ways that may seem incredibly banal, but I know you'll appreciate it. Just going home, for example, at 12 o'clock, and being in silence and switching off my phone for like 30 minutes. And things that I would usually have scoffed at 5 years ago, and I hope like my university friends are not watching because they're going to laugh, learning how to do things like mindfulness and talking about that with my counselor, learning how to breathe differently. So those are the things that I do when I'm alone. I've got like all sorts of apps on my phone to help me like with breathing and meditation.
Oh, we should swap notes on that.
We totally will. And then of course, the other thing is I love going out. I mean, I'm a party animal. You know,
I've bumped into a Great Dane.
Absolutely. I party like no man's business. The last year and a half, I've cut down on my drinking, and drunk people are not fun. So I don't go out as much as I used to, but I love clubbing. I love clubbing. So chances are you'll find me in, if not Braamfontein, in Melville over weekends. And I also like eating out a lot. I'm going to try and start traveling a bit more than I used to. I used to when I was younger.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that I do, or just throwing dinner parties at my house. But I love being around people. I'm an extrovert.
You are. So that's what extroverts get up to. Here's another little message for you, a specially recorded message for Eusebius. Let's take a look.
So I guess this is why you really hate surprises, right? Here I am popping up in the middle of your interview. And I guess it would suck even more if it just came out like dumped you, wouldn't it? Ew. Just kidding, my love. What can I say about you? You are a beautiful person for everybody who actually never gets to see it. The love you show and the loyalty you show and you demonstrate to anybody who does fall in that little category that you do demonstrate is astounding and is truly appreciative. And I'm sure all of your friends and your loved ones can attest to that. What I do love the most about you, though, is how you do inspire excellence in not only one's job, but in oneself. Yeah, love you, my love.
Love of my life, he says.
Wow.
That's your boyfriend.
Wow, that was beautiful.
We can keep secrets. So you hate surprises, but you also suck at marriage proposals.
I do
Who
suck at them.
proposes while you're having KFC?
I think the romantic idea of proposing, and I eventually asked my listeners, you know how we turn everything in our lives into talk?
Absolutely, topics. And
No one proposes like they do in the movies.
No.
No. Which is why in the movies, the other person always says yes. Presumably you've planned it beforehand.
So what inspired you?
My
You were watching
we have spoken about
getting married.
When and how it will happen, the details we still have to work out. But I mean, it's only been 4 years. Yeah.
Oh, only.
And you know how we met?
How?
He is my final connection to that previous place where you and I both worked.
I see. Wow.
He was actually one of my radio listeners that used to call into my show at Power FM. So I had a huge chuckle when I was watching your show yesterday when you were asking the music DJs whether they've ever macked on any of their listeners. I was like, really? They are lying. I'm sure they're lying. And I'm sure it wasn't just Ishmael who had that experience. He didn't like me because he's one of those people who thought that I'm way too arrogant. But because he worked at a media company, he had to monitor how some of the clients of his company are profiled on radio.
Yeah.
And so he was mandated as one of the different shows that he had to listen to mine. And then he started calling in. He used to be Nduduzo from Rosebank because that's where work was located. And then one day I just sort of like eventually stalked him on Twitter. I clicked on his Everda. I saw this hot picture. I also saw this guy who obviously had gone to some sort of swimming competition. It turned out to be the mid-mile that he was done. I thought, wow, must come of good stock. How many black people, A, swim, and B, swim competitively? And he sounds like a coconut. And the Nyanda surname sounds very famous.
Yes.
And all my assumptions turn out to be correct. And then one Sunday he said, oh, I'm in the area. You once said that you live in Sandton. I said, yes. I gave him my address. He came, cooked for me.
Yes.
It's the first time I'd met him. And literally within a week moved in, and we've been together ever since.
Moved in after a week?
Yeah.
Incredible.
And we've lived together ever since.
Incredible. Oh, can't wait for you to walk down the aisle. I can just see it, like the romantic in me. You're not a romantic because you proposed over a meal like that, a takeaway meal, and then you were watching a singing competition. No. No wonder he said no. No wonder he said no. More with Eusebius after the break. Well, Eusebius has sometimes been criticized for his no-holds-barred approach when talking about politics. So does he have any interesting predictions about who's going to take it in next year's elections? We'll find that out in a short while. But first, we have a caller on the line. Let's go straight to Lillian. Good evening, Lillian. Thank you so much for joining us on Real Talk.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Please put me through.
Can you recognize that voice?
Azania Mosaka, you are so pretty. I love you because you've got my favorite person.
That's Lillian.
I love her. I love her to bits. The last time I spoke to you, Lillian, was actually on Power, when she asked me whether I'd like to be her Ben 10.
I listen to him all the time.
Yes. Well, he's listening. Go ahead, Mama Dube. Mama Lillian, can you hear us? I think we've lost
I love you.
Oh,
I love
okay.
you too. I love her to bits.
I love you, you know that. But I'm sorry to say to you, I love you serious more. You serious, let me tell you why I love you. I love your honesty. I love your intelligence. I just love you. I love you when you are wrong. I love you when you are right. I love you anytime.
In all ways. Thank you very much for the call. So she asked you to be her Ben 10 at some point.
She asked me, yeah. But that's what I mean. Like,
Yes.
honestly, there's still like a little echini boy inside me. When I'm like, that's what I mean by these famous people.
Yes.
Even when we started at Power, I was like, oh my God, this is Ursula Stapelfeld from Junior Wimbledon in the 1980s. And she's like, oh my God, you see this. I'm like, no, you are the famous one here.
Right.
So, and this is the other point about the first person who called in earlier. I think there are more South Africans who are generous than ones who are unkind.
Oh, absolutely.
But we sometimes spend way too much energy that we waste on the folks who are unkind. I think our country is filled with generosity.
I want you to take that sign over there on the table. We're going to play a little game with you. I want you to take a look at some of the images on screen. And it's very simple. You've got to pick. You see, you've got two options. Date or ditch.
Okay.
Date or ditch. So take a look. Here's the first character. Date or ditch.
Ooh.
Jim Carrey.
Ooh.
Yay!
That's my favorite actor.
Yeah.
I love him
He's
to bits.
brilliant.
He's absolutely stunning.
brilliant. Yeah.
Underrated because of the comedic work that he does. But I love him to bits.
Let's do the second one. Here's another one. Nick Rabinowitz.
Yay!
2 out of 2
Definitely.
so far.
Love him.
All right. And
Most
here's
famous
another one.
Jewish Xhosa man in the country.
And here's more. You love Bon Jovi.
You did your homework very well.
You love
I'm
Bon
very
Jovi.
impressed. I'm obsessed with Bon Jovi.
Yes.
I am obsessed with it. I
Your
love
days at
Bon
Great
Jovi
College and-
more than white people like cheese. I love Bon Jovi. I really do.
Here's another one. James Self and the other James Blunt.
Ooh.
Which would you date? Which would you ditch?
James Blunt, definitely.
You would
Yeah, definitely. James Blunt. Other James, I can't. But James Blunt for sure. For sure. You know, one of the things about writing, you need emotion to write. And there's nothing that makes you feel emotional like listening to James Blunt.
Oh, I
so I
know.
sometimes put on James Blunt just to get the emotions going.
Oh,
and I
to
write
break that
beautifully.
writer's
Yeah.
block. Fantastic. Now we get get how you work, how you operate. Here's one last one. Do we have it? Was that? Okay, we've got one
Azza?
more for you.
Yeah, I'll date Azza.
We've got one more. I'm hoping that it comes up. Come on. All right, we might have to leave it there. If it does, you'll give us a quick answer. You'll give us a quick. But what's okay? You are now the Magnyandas, so I'm not going to ask you about what you're looking for, though. But clearly, you know.
No, I'm very comfortable in my relationship. I was saying to you off air, which I also own and I write about. And in fact, one of the books I'm working on now will spill more beans. You know, a lot of people say I overshare sometimes.
Yes.
And I actually realized one of the last books I read by a Nigerian writer, a gay Nigerian writer, I actually realized I haven't shared everything about myself. So I used to be quite the player. Some people might think that I'm still quite a player. And so this relationship that I'm in now is beautiful because I'm so content in it.
Oh,
I
yes,
actually
it is.
shocked myself.
That's beautiful. We know you love your caps. So we wanted to gift you this. Take that one off and slap this one on as a gift.
Must I ditch my cap?
You ditch that one and you date this one for life.
I love it.
It's got your name on the side and it's got our name on it.
Oh,
We wanna see you
wow.
with it on.
I love
Put
it.
it on.
I'll
Well, the
buy
most
cheese
important
copies,
and
please.
most needed voices in our society are the ones that encourage robust and healthy debate, ones that interrogate the social facts and challenge who we are. They captivate and they encourage critical thinking. Eusebius is certainly one of those people. It's been a fantastic hour, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you again on Monday at 6 p.m. And don't you look good in that?
Thank you, darling.
Look
Yeah,
fabulous.
thank you. I love it.
That's cheeky.
Real Talk is proudly sponsored by Y-Wave P20 Pro and MTN.
Each week for 10 weeks, we're giving away the latest Y